Welcome back. Let's now take a look at how to overcome microservices complexity. So, think of peanut butter or chocolate, microservices and DevOps are better together. So, by now, companies understand that transforming monolithic applications into decomposed services can certainly drive dramatic gains in productivity, operational efficiency, scalability, and reliability. But teams recognize that change is required in developing, testing, and deploying microservices. For example, they often overlook these substantial changes that are required in collaboration, and communications. So engineers basically have developed best practices, right, to foster a collaborative environment that simplifies the complexity and communication challenges, of all these microservices. Let's take a look at next the good communication practices within the microservices environment, upstream or downstream dependencies, right? So before you deploy any major change to your microservice, notify the team that depend on both upstream and downstream so that in case any issues arise, they would not waste any time to track down the root cause. Secondly, communicate early and often with the team. And this is very, very important for versioning, right? And situations where you may need to temporarily provide backwards compatibility. Third, treat internal APIs like external APIs. So make your API developer-friendly documentation so you know exactly if something goes wrong, you can fix it. And a process for sending test data, for example, right? Fourth, treat downstream teams like customers. For example, you'll be able to create a README with the architectural diagram, instructions, and how to run locally, and information how to contribute. Fifth, should create an announcement-only channel. It is essential to have a single source of truth for important announcements rather than expecting teams to look for all this information. So you want to be able to make sure you do that effectively. Sixth, and finally, focus on your service neighborhood. So your upstream, downstream infrastructure, for example, and security teams are all neighbors of your service. So as a good neighbor, you should attend their demos and stand-ups and get to know their teams, right? And give them access, give them a full service roadmap and maintain a contact list. Next, we'll take a look at, to better understand how microservices are working and breaking up your monolithic applications into microservices is not really easy. First, you need deep understanding of the system itself before you can partition it into service boundaries. So even then, right, partitioning it accurately so you can actually create a true microservice, ones that are single function, fine-grained, and only loosely coupled with applications and other services can be real tricky. So here are some metrics that I want to talk about that you can use, right? So that you can take a look at your microservices within your environment that have too many interdependencies with other services and applications. So deployments, for example, is synchronizing deployments across upstream and downstream teams. If you see deployment markers within your monitoring solution that are synchronized across multiple services, you have not really truly decoupled your services. So, second is communications. Microservices should only use minimal communication with other services to execute its function. So if you see a service that has many back and forth requests to the same downstream services, that definitely is a clear sign that it is not decoupled. And throughput is another marker to check, by the way. If the number of calls per minute for a given microservices is significantly higher than the throughput of the application overall, definitely it's a leading indicator that the service is not decoupled. Third, data stores. Let's take a look at each microservice, by the way, has its own data store to prevent deployment problems, database contention issues, for example, and schema changes that create problems for other services sharing the same data store. So proper monitoring can show you how each microservice can use its own data store. Fourth, in a true microservices, let's talk about scalability, right? Spikes and it can happen every time, right? It corresponds with spikes and throughputs with individual services. Now this indicates dynamic scaling. So one of the top benefits really of microservices. On the other hand, right, if you see corresponding spikes across all services and hosts, there's definitely good reason to believe that your services are not decoupled. And finally, developers for applications. So for example, if you have effective communications across your microservices teams, then you would not need architecture gurus to touch every microservice to ensure they play nicely. So if you have, let's say, 100 engineers and 10 services, and two of your services or engineers are developing these microservices, for example, that's probably a sign that the services are really decoupled, and the development of all your services rely on the tribal knowledge and communication skills of just those two developers. So there you have it. We looked at various aspects of how to overcome microservices complexity. These are important points, and I hope this helps. If you have any questions, definitely post in the discussion area. I'll be happy to answer. And with this, let's move to the next lesson.